Resilient Recruiter podcast. This is your host, Mark Whitby, and I'm very happy to be joined today by Joe Curtis. Joe is a recruiter, a founder of multiple businesses, and now an investor who helps to build and scale recruitment companies. The first business Joe and his co-founders built, 3Search, launched in 2014 and currently employs 40 people. With the successful scaling of 3Search, Joe turned his attention to building the 11 Investments group, which now has a total of 100 heads with 6 recruitment companies within the group. 11 Investments was named as one of the Sunday Times top places to work in 2023. Joe, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. We know so many people in common. I'm surprised that this is the first time we're meeting.
I know, crazy.
So I'm glad it's better late than never. One of the people we know in common is Adrian Ramani, who I believe is part of
I wish it was S3. It's not S3. It's
3Search. Sorry, yeah, my mistake.
Adrian now works in 3Search. Adrian, the legend of e-commerce recruitment that he is, has happily joined us about a year ago now. So is leading our e-com proposition within 3Search.
Awesome,
and doing really well. Yeah,
such a great guy. Like he worked with us for a while in our coaching program, and was really well liked. Within our community. Just so great guy. Shout out to Adrian Ramani.
Absolutely.
Hopefully he will listen to this. So, listen, what I really want to pick your brains about is a couple of things. One is you've got a great culture and you've won awards for it. And, so I want to talk to you about building a business people actually want to work for. And then, that obviously is a critical component of the bigger piece of launching and scaling recruitment businesses. But before we dive into that, Joe, could you just tell us a little bit about your journey and how you've gotten to this point of now being an investor and helping to launch and scale firms?
So I got into recruitment in 2007 after the high flying years of 05 and 06. It was a great time to get in until 2008 happened. And I was in our Weybridge office at Michael Page, and I moved up to the London office, became pals working closely with a guy called Charlie Rawstron. And I had moved into Michael Page Digital, a new discipline that Charlie then came over and started to run and grow. And I moved into a billing role. During that time, a young chap called Andy Sellers, we hired into the business. And we got on well and we did well and for a couple of years, and it was all good and we were loving it. And then at some point we decided we were going to maybe give it a go and do our own thing. And after a long conversations over quite a long period of time, to be fair, we launched 3Search. And one of the reasons, if we ever didn't win work at Michael Page when we were pitching to clients, one of the reasons we didn't win the work was because they went with a boutique. We hated this phrase boutique at the time because it basically meant losing work.
It's funny. Sorry to interrupt. We love the phrase boutique because that's our market, right?
Exactly.
We're against the big guys and we champion the little guys, the solos and the boutique firms.
Well, exactly. Well, I soon joined your band immediately after leaving Michael Page, and that's exactly what we do. And we had a load of success going at it from that angle. We were a boutique, we were a specialist, we were a marketing recruiter, we had a decent pedigree behind us and great relationships, and we had a load of early success. From being that specialist business, we were getting better rates than we used to get at Michael Page with similar businesses. We were getting conversations with people where they were saying, if you were still at that group, that business, we wouldn't be talking to you anymore. We wouldn't be talking to you. Like some unreasonable attitudes, quite honestly, but it was great for us. So we were like, okay, well, we've happened upon this being very specialist, and it's working well, but we want to grow to a significant size. That's going to be difficult, or that's going to get to a point where it becomes difficult in scaling a marketing recruitment firm in London to a significant size. And we're still on that growth journey now. So we decided to start looking at investing in other people. I think after the first investment came along, to be honest, because that was a guy who who knew us from that business, who came to us and said he wanted to do his own thing, but he didn't want to do it on his own. So that was the birth of us partnering with Chris Shuri to launch Higher Capital Consulting. And then another one came along, and then we formally, another one, that next one came along again from the business we were in before. A lady who at the time was Jordan Parrick, is now Jordan Stern, and so she runs another business in our group called Seeker. At that point, we set up 11 Investments as a holding company, and we thought, okay, this is our strategy. We're going to go at it a bit harder. And Charlie and Andy run 3Search, and my responsibility was to identify opportunities to grow that group through hiring people for the existing businesses and finding new people to invest in.
I love it.
And so now we are, a group of discipline-specific recruitment companies, boutiques, based in London, focusing on the UK and the US, about 100 heads and 6 businesses.
Amazing. Joe, it's incredible, like in less than 10 years from that launching in 2014, where you've gone to already is phenomenal. Can I just ask, from a strategic point of view, why invest in other startups instead of just reinvesting that same capital in growing your original business?
Because we didn't want a multidiscipline business. We wanted a group of specialists.
Okay.
And I suppose we could have done multidisciplines within one organization, or had a group of businesses that we owned and we hired people in to run. But
yes.
We like you've just said earlier, we champion small business. We champion entrepreneurship and growth of small companies, and we have a platform that enables significant ownership to the guys that come in and found the businesses with us. So we're at a point now where we know how to, I call it kind of boutique power. Like, we know how to scale and grow a recruitment business today in 2023, and we bring in founders who know their market really well. And with our blueprint and the kind of the core foundations we've got of our beliefs of how to run a business and the systems, if they're the right person, they can plug into that environment and we can go quite quickly.
Amazing. All right. So when you're talking to founders about, launching and scaling, what's the roadmap look like? What is the roadmap? And then what is your role in facilitating that trajectory for them? So
the roadmap is, although there is a template, and we have goals and proven track record of what we can do in a set period of time, it is market dependent, and also to a certain extent it's down to that person's ambitions and capability.
Mm-hmm.
A super biller it would be really good at getting things off the ground, but they might not be so good when you've got a few more heads.
Yep.
As opposed to a manager profile might not be so good at getting things off the ground, but when there's a critical mass of people, it starts to come into their own. What they get from us as a incubating investment model. So it's important to stress that we're not interested in a hands-off investment. We don't really, apart from an anomaly, we don't deal with investments that aren't in our office with us. So that those individuals are buying into being a part of our environment. So they get all the obvious benefits are a shared service provision. So finance, ops, talent acquisition, marketing. You start your own business, you've got to go and figure out how to do that. Or you come and plug into our existing models, which we think work really well. That's pretty obvious, and the cost saving you get from that might not be as obvious, but it is significant. So you don't have to outsource. You don't have to outsource your finance to an accountancy. We've got an exceptional in-house team who do that, and we charge all that back at cost to those businesses rather than make profit in the investment house. In 11 Investments. So that's kind of more obvious. I suppose the less obvious piece is that, like, the environment they're becoming a part of and the culture they're benefiting from, the group celebrations that we run, and the sense of belonging that all the employees of all the little brands feel by being a part of 11 Investments. And we take all of that operational stuff off the founders' hands pretty much, so that they are coming in to run a business, but to run the sales arm of that business. So they bill, they generate work, and they manage their team, and we try and look after everything else. On top of that is also the cost efficiencies you get from the economies of scale of buying products and services in bulk, as it were. All of these things ultimately add to the profitability of the business. We've made a lot of mistakes over the last 9 years, and for the next 9, we're going to spend our time preventing other businesses we invest in from making those same mistakes. And the compounding effect is we are every iteration, every new business we launch goes better more quickly, with less mistakes and ultimately more profit. We are absolutely obsessed with not being fixated with an end goal. Everybody, in my view, lots of people anyway who set up a recruitment business have a fixed exit in mind. And it just doesn't happen for 99.99% of the recruitment population. So we don't have a fixed goal we're working to, which is in X period of time we want to sell for this amount of money. We are seeing how great we can be, seeing what we can build, but really focusing on enjoying it all as much as we can. And part of enjoying it is seeing the fruits of our labor rather than completely going at it just to get a sale at some point.
Makes total sense. There's so many things I want to circle back to, but I love this, by the way, Joe, what you're describing. I mean, all of the things sound good in terms of like the shared service, center for ops, finance, marketing, talent acquisition. That's huge. And then obviously the economies of scale. But the bit that really I keyed in on was the sense of belonging, because that is the major downside of launching your own firm. Is you're now alone. You don't have those colleagues to bounce off of, and it is quite isolating. And you're in a vacuum. And so to have the benefit of launching your own business while still keeping the good bit of working for someone else, which is you've got colleagues, you've got like office parties, you've got things happening, there's buzz, there's awards, there's that you have a ready-made culture rather than like 1, 2, 3, 5 people. You're building culture, but it takes a while to kind of really create something that's cohesive, that is attractive to people, where you start being able to snowball, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I think that's brilliant. You mentioned you made a lot of mistakes in the first 9 years, which now you're able to help your team and your new founders to avoid. What have been some of those big mistakes that in retrospect I guess they're learning opportunities, but I'm sure they were painful.
Yeah. Everything. We've made mistakes doing all sorts of things, from hiring the wrong people, seeing pound signs and hiring the wrong people, maybe thinking, maybe they're not quite right for the culture, but they're going to make lots of money. We've done that in the past, which is we learned pretty early actually that wasn't the right way to go. The people and who we bring into our environment is so very important, and we're very, very protective over that. So not only have we made mistakes hiring people, we've also made the wrong investments in the wrong profile of person. Whether it be, I don't know, some mistakes we've prevented happening, or some things we prevented happening as well with our kind of the extension of our network. So we're quite fortunate that there's 3 of us. Mm-hmm. So 3 of us with 3 very different skill sets actually, and very different networks. So we do get kind of that kind of gets I suppose accelerated. So I'm thinking of a point now around finding an office, for example. So when we first started, we were looking at we were looking at getting into a shared space of some sort, and I ran it past a friend of mine and said, look, just make sure we're not making a huge mistake getting into this. And she said, well, stop there, hold on. Actually, she worked for Knight Frank, and she said, stop there, don't do that. I've got this amazing opportunity for you that is too small for us to really market and do anything with, but here you go, here's this amazing office. And it was a beautiful office in Victoria. It's like a 400 square foot room with a garden and a bay window, and it was this amazing place for us to be. And that's kind of a benefit of our extended network, I suppose. Back to your point around mistakes. I mean, one of the early mistakes is we probably got a bit too close to our restrictive covenants when we first started, although we were heavily advised not to. So I won't blame anyone, but we specifically on here, but we got a little bit too close to our restrictive covenants. So we got a lot of heat from our ex-employer. So it was I remember now quite well. It was around I think it was the 26th or 27th of September. I was driving out of London back to my parents in Gloucestershire, and I got a phone call, I think from Charlie, saying, like, have you had any post or have you had an email? And I was like, no, I haven't had what are you talking about? He was like, we've got a 27-page letter from Mishcon de Rea on behalf of Michael Page, which was Mishcons are a big law firm. So we that basically 1 month in from official launch date, that literally turned our world upside down. We didn't do any work for 2 weeks. We just sat with lawyers, and it did the job. It really, really distracted us. So,
which is probably what the primary. Well, it's to distract you, but also like drown you in legal costs that you really can't afford when you're a startup.
Yeah, it cost more than a third of our initial investment.
Wow.
Responding to those letters.
Okay.
So it cost us £10,000. And I went and had a chat with somebody who still worked at the business, and I was like, look, when's this gonna stop? Do we need to close the business down? Like we were 24 hours away from shutting 3Search and starting again. So I'd say the restrictive covenants piece is really important. We actually weren't trying to do anything wrong. We just got a bit close to the line, and that was a big lesson. But quite a fun story these days.
What was the learn from that? Like, what in retrospect, how would you have done it differently to avoid that 10K and all that stress?
So I think restrictive covenants are such a blessing to get when you leave employment and you start your own business, because you should abide by them as much as possible, and it gives you an opportunity to build a new network or to leverage an old network. And so you spend your first 6, 9, 12 months, whatever your covenant period is, operating in a market that either you don't know or you know less, and it gives you an opportunity to do something very as closely aligned as you can with what you want to build, but with kind of not your closest, most recent contacts, because your closest, most recent contacts, if you've got good relationships with them, they're going to come and work with you in 6, 9, 12 months time anyway. So you work really hard through the first period, abiding by your restrictive covenants. And then when that's over, you've got this new set of customers as well as the old ones you can go back to. So I think it's a real blessing in the medium term. And that's what we've learned is play by the rules. There's plenty of work out there for everybody. No one needs to fall out about it. Just kind of get your head down and crack on in the areas that you're allowed to, and don't sign anything post leaving. That also, I would say, you might get a post termination contract popped in front of you by an employer. I would say speak to a lawyer for advice, but I wouldn't see any reason to sign that. You've already signed your employment contract. There's no need to re-sign anything else.
Great advice. I suppose it also gets you back fighting fit and builds those business development muscles again, which sometimes have gotten flabby if you've gotten, used to having repeat business from certain accounts, and you can no longer work with those companies for X period of time. Then it forces you to remember how to, or learn, if you never learned in the first place, how to do new business.
Especially if you're on your own, because often people setting up their own business are often they're not recruiters anymore, they're managers, or these days I suppose most managers are still are billers as well, but sometimes they're more senior and they're just in a man management position. So on your own that's tricky. I think we were lucky in that the three of us have three very different skill sets, and that we identified that early on, and we've pretty much stuck to them to this day with a bit of movement. So Charlie was always going to be the man manager, and he was people loved working for him. He was really good at it. Is really good at it. And so we identified that he was going to be the manager of people. Andy, as I said, was younger than us at the time, so he was 26 when we set the business up. But he was this superstar biller, right? He also managed a couple of people at the time, but his real skill was in placing jobs. He would work every hour he needed to make sure that work got filled. So that was his job to begin with. And my job was finding work for Andy to fill, and then it was always going to be finding people to work for us. And then Andy's job has really evolved over the 9 years. He only had a couple of years experience when we started. He's now got significantly more. And he's also stayed in the market. Client-wise, he's stayed in that client market ever since then. So he's now does a far bigger business development job than we ever thought he would when we started this. He's now very, very well known, very well networked, and well capable in developing work. And I still find people to work for us and find new people to invest in. And having that distinction of skill sets, I think, is really, really helpful. I think doing it as one person is really, really hard. Doing it as two equal shareholders is maybe even harder, because you can't make a decision often. Often if lots of people go into a recruitment business with two of them with the greatest intentions, that's a good thing to do. But you're in this quandary. If one of you owns more than the other, then usually has more voting rights than the other, then that person makes the decision always. And if there's two of you that have 50-50 split, that's usually 50-50 split on decision making. And if you don't agree on something, you can't move forward. We've been lucky that with the three of us, we've run a 2-to-1 voting system on everything, apart from a few caveats to that. So we won't hire somebody unless all three of us want to hire them, for example. And basic rules like that have been easier to operate with three of us.
This is actually really interesting, and I wasn't planning on delving into this today, but we see a lot of multi-owner businesses where there's 2 or 3 co-founders who are partners, and it's got pros and cons to that setup, as you've identified. What advice do you have for making that work? You've already highlighted one thing, which is actually being really clear on what each person's strengths are and assigning different roles to each partner within the business. Are there any other pitfalls or things that you guys have found has made it work?
We are brutally honest with each other a lot of the time. You have to challenge each other. You have to hold each other to account, to standards. We have things that we're all responsible for, and then we hold each other to account for those things. Our first meetings were in the early years were like very, very intense. We were so committed. We were so keen, so ambitious to make it work that we would have really, really draining meetings where we were challenging each other a lot and holding each other to account. That's chilled out a bit over the years. But I would say be vocal with each other about what's expected, and then pull each other up on what's delivered or not. Otherwise, you start stewing. And also, I would when you look, we've seen time and time again, people come to us as a pair, and they're talking about splitting it 50-50, and I look at them and I'm like, why on earth are you willing or want to split it 50-50 with this other person who seemingly doesn't bring half to the party what you're bringing? I think a lot of that is down to just comfort, somebody not wanting to do it completely alone. But there are other options to not doing it completely alone without choosing a partner that might not be up to your standard capability or network wise
or commitment. Like I think,
or commitment.
Yeah, like people can learn skills or can, but absolutely, everyone has to be, to make this work, everyone has to be 100% committed, right? And that's, if there's a discrepancy there, that's bound to cause issues and resentments. Joe, you mentioned something which I thought was interesting, and that is, well, one of the things that we see, which causes issues with partners or multiple directors of a business, is lack of a shared vision. They all seem to have different ideas of what they're trying to accomplish. Were you guys always clear from the beginning, like what success looked like, or?
From day one, definitely not.
Okay.
Actually, what we did really well was articulated a vision that we all bought into, that worked in the short medium term for 3Search, which enabled us to hire people really well. So that's something we'll come back onto, I think, which is really important.
Yeah.
But if you sat us all down and said, how long you're in this for, I think I remember quite clearly. At the time, it was a typical answer from me that was, I want to be in and out in 5 years. So I'd said, I've at the time had enough of recruitment, probably considered doing another business away from recruitment. I landed on recruitment again. So I was like, 5 years, I'm out. That's it, I'm done. And Andy, like, hyper ambitious at the time, he wanted to take over the world. And he was like, let's build something bigger than Michael Page or whatever. He was like super ambitious of like, let's really go for it. And I think Charlie was probably more reasonably somewhere in the middle, which is kind of generally how our relationship has transpired over the years.
So what was the process of refining that to something that everybody could buy into?
It's just happened naturally. It's like we constantly talk about what are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing? Are we still all bought in? Is this the plan? Because you can just start thinking, wouldn't it be good if we do this, and this? And these days, we don't spend an awful lot of time together as a three, talking about stuff, and making decisions. So if you're not careful, you can start planning the future on your own, and then one of the others is planning a slightly different future. And as time goes on, those plans get further and further and further apart. So it's important to keep talking about what we're building. But as I said, it's kind of naturally come together because we're all of us are enjoying it more and more than we ever have. We're more ambitious than we ever have been. We're getting on with each other more than we ever have. And so it's kind of because we're really enjoying what we're building. There's naturally just become, there's no end goal. No one's talking about trying to build a 10,000 person business, but also no one's talking about selling in 2 years. It's just not. That's not. That's not on the radar. I think what helped that is a couple of years ago we were approached to sell 3Search.
Okay.
So we had a very interested party in 3Search as a standalone business that they were going to say, they'll buy it, and you can keep the other business going, but your commitment has to be here. And it was a lot of money, and we went quite far down that process, and we really liked the guys. We still do really like the guys who wanted to buy the business. But it just didn't feel quite right. I think there probably wasn't quite enough money for what we thought we'd got the business to. So I suppose the profit number that the valuation was being calculated on, although the valuation was very generous on that profit number, we felt we got ourselves into an amazing position to then grow from there across the group. So and honestly, it made us feel a little bit cold. And what would we do after that? And it wasn't as exciting as maybe you'd hope it would be. So we're really loving what we're doing. We're really enjoying the journey. We get some validation with what we're doing both internally and most importantly internally from the guys who continue to work with us. We're seeing how good we can be.
Amazing. It's such a Cool story. Talk to me about creating a business that people want to work for and actually, being recognized by the Sunday Times as well as a great place to work. That can only really happen through conscious planning and, deciding that that's what you're going to do. What, what was that thought process and how have you gone about that?
I think that's just all evolved from day one, from hiring the first person we hired. So we had recognised early that hiring people is going to be hard in the recruitment industry, and keeping people is going to be hard in the recruit doing what we're doing. It's a hyper competitive market, as everybody knows, right? Everyone knows whether they run their own thing or they're employed. Hiring is hard. If you're employed. In a larger business with an existing brand, let me tell you, when you do your own thing, it's a bit harder than you think it might be. But we'd committed to providing as good a place, a good an environment as we possibly could for people to work, so they loved it. Because if they loved it, they're going to stay, and if they're going to stay, they'll end up being more profitable. And not only that, they'll tell more people that they love it. And so then more people will be interested in joining. That combined with building we'll go into more detail about that, but that combined with building as good a brand with our customers as we can, was really important, because people do question your track record. They do question how successful are you? How successful are your individuals? Good recruiters want to know that. So, we've got, 3Search on its own has got 575 5-star Google reviews. The group, I think we're over 900 5-star Google reviews.
That's amazing.
That blows competitors out the water. Like, that just doesn't exist in the industry, unless I'm missing something obvious. That combined with we've got really, really good Glassdoor profile. And this employer brand we're building is all based around us really striving to provide the best benefits package we possibly can, as a kind of holistic package for people. It's really important that we consider everybody's needs collectively, rather than just paying as much commission as we possibly can, or having an amazing holiday benefit, or we're trying to put everything together. So we do have an amazing commission structure, I believe. We do have a good holiday. We've got unlimited holiday. We've been doing that since day one. So one of the early adopters of that. The goal is to provide the best environment we possibly can, and build this platform that enables everybody to flourish both professionally and personally. And if we do that and have this environment and build this sense of belonging, then people are more likely to enjoy themselves, and if they're more likely to enjoy themselves, they're more likely to stay.
I agree.
That's so important in our industry.
Agree 100%. This is the biggest failing. Well, I don't know what the biggest. One of the biggest failings of the recruitment industry overall is the attrition rate and the staff turnover, which has a knock-on effect on client-candidate relationships and the perception of the industry and everything else. So, and it's just so crazy when you think of how much more profitable it is to keep people. Could you give
so what something to talk about there is what we don't do, which a lot of the recruitment industry do, is just hire lots of people and see who's going to work out.
Right.
We are very, very selective over who we hire. Mm-hmm. And then we put our all into making that person work, giving them the best platform possible. Whether that's technology or benefits, or if any flexibility they might need, or the management style, or we just give people the best possible environment to realize their ambition, which is something that's really important for us across the board. We want people to do that. So. Although we have grown considerably over the last few years, we have met lots and lots and lots of people we haven't wanted to hire, and we are very selective over who we do, and I think that's something that's a big miss. But people do that. You see these businesses recruiting cohorts of 10, 20 people at a time, and then literally sink or swim, see what happens, go through this academy style, and I understand why they do it, because it's sometimes quite difficult to interview people to know what they're going to be like in real life. And sometimes we get it wrong. But it's really important to us that we don't have that sort of hire and sink or swim culture. We have a very supportive, collaborative environment.
I love that. And
could
you give more specifics around? So you've talked about the benefits, but what are some of the other specific things that have created that culture, provided the platform, and allowed you to win that Sunday Times? Like, what are the factors, if you boiled it down to, 3, 4, 5, 6 things that you think are the 8, or let's put it the 80-20 rule. What are the key things that really make people perform and stay with you?
People have to buy into what you're building in order to, our industry is around humans working hard that's effectively what it is. And people have to be motivated to do that. And
self-motivated, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. They do have to be self-motivated to do that, because, well, they do in our environment, because we don't heavily measure and demand more from people in a KPI, in a blanket KPI sense. So it's all about garnering as much discretionary effort as you can out of individuals. People have to want to work hard for you and for the environment. And so it's leading with caring, providing these things first, in the hope that the return is going to be loyalty, hard work, care. We do a lot of cross-pollination where at all possible, so referring work within the brands. We do that as well as we can. It's a really collaborative environment. We hire very collaborative people, so we hire team players with high standards. So it's a real fine balance we've got to strike between hiring people they are competitive, but also they care about each other and they want to help each other, and getting that right. Having the environment that's really supportive within a high performance culture, means that people stick around and they enjoy it, and they are grateful for what we've built, and they want to be a part of that.
It's really interesting because a lot of recruitment business owners want the big billers, right? They want to find those men and women who are going to absolutely kill it and just generate a lot of revenue. And those individuals are sometimes not the best team players, not always. But how do you know that someone's going to be collaborative before you hire them?
So we hire based on behaviors or values, whatever you want to call it. And ours are: be kind, have ambition, show respect, and love what you do, which are really quite woo-woo for the recruitment industry.
No, I like them.
That's general. Good.
Yeah.
But we try and get that bit right. And if we get that bit right, and then give people the tools and the framework of how we operate, then I think that that they can be both. I think of our some of our top billers. And although they are driven, like, some of them spend an awful lot of time helping other people, and they do care, and they do coach, and they are important parts of the culture. I think there are. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive.
Totally. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, something else that I'm aware of is that I think you have a 50-50 gender split within your 100 people, which is
it might be
unusual.
It is unusual. It might be a bit. I think it's a bit heavier towards females in definitely in research at the moment. It was really important to us from day one. So our first hire was female. We are 3 blokes at the end of the day, 3 white males. Trying to build a diverse business is not particularly easy. We knew we were going to have to hire a female early on if we wanted to have any sort of gender diversity in the business, which was really important to us. Some of the best recruiters I've worked with in my career are women, and we didn't want a all male environment. Not least, we hire research is a marketing recruiter, and it is a there are lots of female marketers and lots of females in that industry. So we focused on it from day one. We've always thought about it. We've always wanted to have a balanced business. We have significant amounts of female leadership. We have female founder. We have all of our heads of department in the support functions are female, apart from one. We have a significant female leadership profile, and both at director level, manager level, through the business. It's something we definitely live and breathe.
So, Joe,
it's important.
This is something I talked to Anne Swain about. Do you know Anne, or APSCO?
I don't know Anne.
You know APSCO, the Association of Professional Staffing Companies. So she's a chairperson of that, and they've done some research that shows that gender balance is fairly balanced at the entry level in recruiting, but at senior levels, the more senior you get, the more male dominated it becomes. And they were looking into why that would be and interviewing people in the industry to sort of get to grips with it. But based on the early research, her suspicion is the culture. And it's not that females couldn't get promoted, is that they kind of opt out. They get like the typical recruitment agency culture is one that leads more, is more appealing sometimes to young men than to young women. And so they were almost like, I don't know if I really want to, if this is for me longer term. So how have you fostered that progression and the leadership being so diverse?
I suppose we were fortunate in that several of the senior female leaders we've got in the business we've known historically.
Okay.
So I've either I or one of us has worked with previously. It's important that not only do we have females on the senior leadership teams, but that they have a significant voice, and that their comments, their thoughts are heard, and we respond to those. Providing an environment where people feel safe and respected and valued. So we try and listen. We survey the business an awful lot. Questionnaires. How are you? What can we be doing better? How are you feeling? About certain points, and then generally. So it's continuous. It's not. We're not perfect. It's a ever moving kind of situation. But I think that the more females that are on the kind of at the table, the more the easier it becomes to attract even more.
Definitely, yeah. It is like a virtuous cycle there, I guess, where then there are role models, there are mentors, and also new people joining the business can see that you are serious about it. It's not just lip service.
Yeah, absolutely. It's everybody says the same thing. It's about what does your track record prove? And we had to work really hard in the early days to make sure we were living what we were saying.
Fantastic. You mentioned surveying the business. I think that's a really important thing to do. Is there a particular tool or platform that you use for that, or have you developed your own?
I think we probably use HiBob these days, or just our HR platform.
HiBob. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. What's your goal in doing that?
To genuinely make sure people are happy.
Yeah.
It's anonymous. We want people to tell us everything, warts and all, so that we can do something about it.
Yeah.
It's not always incredibly helpful, but it's always helpful. Not every answer is incredibly helpful, but it also gives us an opportunity to explain why we're not doing something. So that things don't stew, people don't fester on things. It gives us an opportunity to exactly, to not only to do better, but explain why we're not doing things they might want us to do. An example of that might be more working from home these days. Like we survey them, they tell us they love being part of the culture, and the best thing about being here is the people they work with. And then some of them in the same breath are like, but I quite like to work home 5 days a week. And it's like, well, That doesn't work for us. That's not how we're running our business. We want people who want to be part of our environment, and some of the time that is in the office with everybody at the same time. So that's just an example of why. So we would then communicate in that instance. We would then communicate to the business why we're not doing something. So the risk there is that you highlight something someone's got a problem with because it's anonymous. You highlight something someone's got a problem with, and you bring that to the fore. But I think it's important that we do address it, and we do we do explain why we're doing certain things, because I think often communication within organizations is poor or non-existent on decision making.
Definitely.
And I might be in a situation where a recruiter from another business is complaining at me about a part of their organization, and I can see why that is happening, but it's not being communicated to them effectively. And if it was, that maybe that person wouldn't be sat in front of me.
Okay, so really interesting. I love the fact you're doing these surveys and that you're then using it to improve communication within the business so everyone knows what's going on. And I think there is a disconnect often between the leadership are strategizing, planning, and making certain policy decisions, but they're not transparent about that or explaining the reason why and ultimately the benefit to the team members as to why it's actually in everyone's interest to do it that way. But let's talk about that specific subject, because I know it's been done to death on LinkedIn, but I'm really interested in your perspective as a owner who's an investor who's scaling businesses, why you believe it's super important to have people in the office for a good chunk of time. And like, how many days a week are you guys in full time, or like, is it a hybrid? What's your setup?
Yeah, we are hybrid. We're still hybrid. We are in the main, we're in 3 days a week.
Yep.
There are exceptions to that, so we might want them very junior people in slightly more than that, 4 days. Some people who live far away will be in less.
Yep.
We've got people in Rowan and York. We've got Chloe in Bristol. So we're obviously, well, we're not obvious. Obviously, we're in the central West End, so we're at Piccadilly Circus. So we're pretty central for people who are in the southeast. But so we have a hybrid model. And my view on it. So I think back to when I was a 23-year-old starting out in my recruitment career, and I absorbed and I learned so much from people who weren't directly in my team. Mm-hmm. You hear snippets or phrases that people use, or the way they go about things, or people grab you and help you with stuff, training sessions, whether you have training sessions but mostly, I think it's what you learn from others who are not your direct line manager. Your direct line manager is managing probably other people, and they're doing a billing job. So there's only a limited amount of time they can spend with you, whether that's in the office or virtually. So, it's so beneficial to be around other people doing the same job. It's really, really beneficial when you're very early in your career. But I think it's still beneficial throughout your journey. I learn from people around me all the time. We also want to hire people who want to be around other people. That's the profile of person we want to hire. Yeah. We enjoy being together, and I think most humans actually would like, or a lot of humans anyway, like to be in sociable environments. And the profile of person we hire, we want to be in the business is going to be that person. There is flexibility around it. We don't work crazy hours. We are reasonable and respectful of people's time, but we want to be together, and we think that's the right way.
Do you know, I am definitely leaning with you on this topic, but I want to play devil's advocate just for a second to sort of sound this out together. By the way, did you hear Stephen Bartlett's interview with Malcolm Gladwell? No. Do you know Diary of a CEO with Stephen?
I do, yeah.
So it was because they were both saying, so Malcolm Gladwell is just a really brilliant thinker and author. He's one of my favorite authors. And Stephen Bartlett, obviously really successful entrepreneur. And they were both saying, like, human beings are wired to need that connection and be with other people. And do we really want to build a society where we're all just sitting in our pajamas and never leave home? And they got absolutely like slated on social media of like being dinosaurs and not
by people in their pajamas.
Yeah, exactly. But the counter argument is what you're saying is true, but the benefits of remote work outweigh the disadvantages in many respects, i.e., able to attract talent more easily because that's what people want, or they think they want it. Number two is opportunities to expand beyond your local region in terms of the talent you can attract. You've got a much bigger talent pool potentially if you can recruit in the whole country, or even in other countries. So that challenge of finding good people when you've got the whole world to play with, obviously, then that might be a potential solution. And thirdly, people who have, since COVID, they've actually almost redesigned their whole life to avoid commute. Like they've moved further out of the city.
Yep.
They've invested in bigger homes, or for people, say, with disabilities, it's been a huge benefit to not have to come into the office and to be able to work from home in an environment that supports them. So I can see lots of, the commute for me is the biggest one. I've worked from home now for 20 plus years, and not having an extra 2 hours added onto my workday is definitely, a benefit. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I can comfortably get around your first 2 points.
Okay. All right.
I think you're right. I think it is easier, or it can be easier to attract people who, like you say, think they want to work remotely.
Yeah.
However, I would go further than that and say it is much harder to keep those people. So you will find it way more difficult to build a sense of being and culture that humans naturally want to be a part of. So you're more likely to lose those people that you've so easily hired. So I think that one's out the window.
So it cancels each other out.
Yeah, we can say cancels each other out if you want,
okay.
but I think I don't think it's a. I believe I'm obviously on one on this. Yeah. I believe it's really important to provide that that environment for people to want to remain a part of.
Yeah.
Your second point, I think it's much harder to manage people remotely. So even if you do build this team, it's much harder to manage them. To everything's got to be booked in, or you can't just grab somebody or shout something across the office. You've got a phone call or organize a Teams call. It's just like logistically running a business of our size. It's more formulaic and I think more difficult to get product out of people if they're all remote. So yeah. you talk about servicing other parts of the world. Like our US team is based in the office in London.
Yeah.
Recruiting across the US.
Mm-hmm.
Your third point is more valid. I do think people have designed their lives. Some of them have moved away from cities. I think some people are starting to move back to the cities, though. This happened. I think I read something at the beginning of the pandemic. This happened in the Spanish flu, where people ran away from big conurbations, and slowly over a period of time following that, they came back to the conurbations, and I think that's started to happen already. And some people, like you, clearly it works for a long period of time, and you're happy, and it's where you want to be. But I think for lots of people, it won't be a permanent thing. For the disability piece, there's no argument. I can't argue with that. That's absolutely a valid point, and for certain instances, it's valid.
I think, yeah. I mean, look, I don't run a recruitment business. Our business is 100% remote. So my colleagues in the UK, Leanne is in Nottingham, and Julie is in Belfast, and then we have a remote team in the Philippines as well. And it has taken longer, especially with the guys in the Philippines. It's taken a lot longer to create culture, and it's been and you do have to. It's not spontaneous. Like the other day, Leanne organized that we had a team lunch. So we just chatted over lunch and on Zoom, and it was a lot of fun. But you have to almost, it doesn't happen spontaneously. You have to engineer it. And, and the people I'm hiring for our core team here in the UK are not juniors. They're very experienced.
Yeah. I think, I'm not saying it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm just saying for what we're trying to build, it would be, I think on the whole, it would be much harder. And I have to stress, we are not an inflexible business. Like I'll get hammered by my business partners if they I'm coming across as a draconian 5-day a week. Like that's not what we are. We're a flexible, hybrid, forward-thinking business that wants people to benefit from each other's company most of the time. And there are exceptions to everything that we do.
Joe, I want to be sure to ask you about your B-Corp certification, which is, I think, something you've recently achieved. What does that entail?
Yeah, we were always very admiring of businesses who are B-Corp certified. It's a movement we really, really heavily believe in. So we started the arduous process a couple of years ago of becoming B-Corp certified. So for those who don't know, it is a process you need to go through. Where basically you give an awful lot of information about your business, how you go about business, how you treat people internally, externally, who you do business with, who your shareholders are, how you reward people, and it's a long, lengthy process that we're delighted to have been certified by B Labs as being a B Corp. So that's really great for us.
What does that actually mean, or what does it represent?
So it is a movement, I suppose, that is several criteria around how you do business. So everything from, do you have charity partners? Do you recycle? Do you pay people fairly? Do you who owns the business? And then a big part is who you do business with. So they want to know if you're doing business with gambling organizations, with oil businesses, with it's a big piece of corporate social responsibility measurement, effectively.
Interesting. All right, that's cool. I've not come across another recruitment business that has done that.
Yeah, we're not unique. There are some recruitment businesses that have done that, but it's not a recruitment first certification for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And talk to me about the
Flexer. Yeah. So we are.
Flexer, yeah. What is Flexer?
So Flexer, I'm just going to. We just chuck this onto the back of the office chat when I talk about not being draconian. Another thing to make sure I mention is that we are a flexible organisation. There's a business called Flexer, Flexr, which measures how flexible you are as an organisation, and we rank really highly on that platform. Very, very highly within the recruitment industry. So just want to make sure I'm making that clear.
And what does Flexer look at? Like how do they measure flexibility?
They measure flexibility around a number of things: office environment, working patterns, lots of flexible benefits. People would, dogs in the office. I think, just a myriad of flexible benefits that can be added.
Awesome. So what do you think are let me just open this up to you for a second, Joe. Like, is there anything that we haven't discussed yet that you were really keen that we should explore together?
I think you've covered everything that I wanted to get across.
I feel like this hopefully will be part one of of two or more, because there's so much we could delve into, like in terms of scaling. There's so many more challenges and opportunities that I'd love to pick your brains about further. So can we say to be continued?
Absolutely. There's loads more, I'm sure, that we could discuss in terms of growing things.
Awesome, Joe. So finally, 11 investments. What's the plan from here? You've got 6.
We've got 6.
Is that including 3 search?
Including 3 search, yeah. Still wish it was S3.
I know. I automatically say S3 instead of 3 search.
It happens a lot. Yeah, look, we are building an incubating investor, which is a group of discipline-specific recruitment companies. The next goal is 11, which only because we're called 11.
Makes sense.
It makes sense. So we think that will be, headcount-wise, we think that will probably be between 220 and 250 people, dependent on us finding business partners we're excited about and we want to do things with. I think we'll probably be international sooner than we thought we were going to be. Actually, opportunities are arising that look really, really interesting for us there. And we're seeing how much fun we can have and seeing how good we can be.
Awesome.
Whilst trying to earn a living at the time.
So Joe, if someone listening is interested in like being a founder and partnering with you or learning more about what you guys have going on, how should they do that?
They can reach out to me either on LinkedIn or by email, which is joe@11investments.co.uk.
Fantastic. Joe, I've really enjoyed this. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Mark. It's been great. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to The Resilient Recruiter. I know how busy recruiters are, so I'm honored that you're investing this time with me each week. I don't take your attention for granted. That's why I'm going all out to deliver value for you here, real insights you can apply to improve your business. And if you really want to help me to reach a wider audience and impact more people, please consider leaving the show a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you leave me a review, please reach out and let me know so I can thank you personally. Please hit the subscribe button and I'll see you next time.